And we are live, I think. One of the things I love about lives, y'all, is a lot of times when I do content that is pre recorded, I get in my own way. So I like lives because it feels so much more natural. It actually feels like I'm in front of an audience, which is something that I love to do. Many of you all know, I'm a professional speaker. So that's why I enjoy live so much more. But anyway, hello, you all. Happy Wednesday. It is currently noon central here in Tennessee, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I am super excited about today's topic. And today's topic is on diverse leadership in an increasingly diverse future. Now, what inspired this topic? I will tell you what inspired it. What I did was I decided to go ahead and release a poll on LinkedIn, and this was about 2 weeks ago. And in the poll, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. If you look in the comments, actually, you can see the results of the poll. But in the poll, one of the questions that I asked was, how do we prepare for an increasingly diverse future? Right. And so then I had 4 answers, and y'all forgive me because I don't have it pulled up. I should have the poll results in front of me right now. Give me like 2 seconds while I pull this up. Okay, let me see. Where are the results? Shame on me. But while I look this up, I do want to say that I was not surprised by the results. Okay, I found it. So here were the questions on the poll, and here's the actual question. So the question that I asked folks was, what do you believe organizations should prioritize to ensure inclusivity and success in an increasingly diverse future? So in other words, as our country continues to become increasingly diverse, and we see that there's more diversity within our communities, within the workplaces. What do we need to do to prepare for that? And so I had 4 responses that folks could choose from. The first one was diverse leadership. The second was equity and inclusion training. The third one was employee resource groups. And then the fourth one was mentorship programs. Now, unsurprisingly, folks ranked diverse leadership as their first choice. So 57% of the participants who participated in the poll said that diverse leadership is what's going to ensure inclusivity and success in an increasingly diverse future. But second came mentorship programs, which is also a really good topic. What I think I'm going to do is, of course, I'm going to focus on the diverse leadership aspect today, but I actually do want to touch on that because there's so many benefits to having mentorship programs in order to create a pipeline for diverse leaders to fill some of those positions. I look at a lot of organizations, especially those that have had CEOs and leaders in positions for like 20, 30 years. And sometimes they don't always have a clear succession plan in place. And I always say to myself, this is the perfect way to prepare, to set up the next generation of leaders by creating mentorship programs. So that is something I really want to get into because I think it's a great way to increase diversity and representation at the leadership level. But let's focus on the diverse leadership part. And as I mentioned before, when I released the poll, I kind of figured that this would be the top choice. And the reason for that is that we know that folks often want to see themselves represented at the leadership level. We know the benefits of it, right? So the benefits, everything from you have increased creativity, you have increased innovation, you have less turnover when you have diverse leadership, you have, the list goes on and on, right? And so it's so many benefits to it, right? And just having that representation and knowing that you have different voices at the table that represent the diverse populations that they serve, it's a win-win for everyone, right? Because the organization is more likely to thrive, and customers and the populations you serve are more likely to get the best services because they know that they have folks who understand their needs, right? And so we know the benefits. So I'm not going to go down the long list of benefits of diverse leadership because the research is clear, the data is clear. And I have to say this because I see people get so bogged down in data and research sometimes that they never move past that. And I'm at this phase in my life where, and I guess this phase in my life and this phase in my work as a DEI consultant where I'm like, okay, all right, we got the research, we have the data, it's saying the same thing over and over. And at some point, it's like we have to move beyond that and start thinking strategic priorities and implementation. It's like, okay, all right, y'all gonna data me to death, right? Like, I don't need another report. And this is coming from a researcher. I'm a researcher. And sometimes I feel like it's just like, it's too much in terms of, okay, numbers, research, qualitative research and data, but not moving beyond that, right? So it's so important to, as you think about how you want to increase diversity at the leadership level, think about, okay, you have some clear, you've assessed it, right? You have some clear organizational commitments around it. How are you going to actually get to the point where it's like, okay, now we are implementing, we are putting processes in place to ensure that we have the diverse leadership that our organization needs. So I am going to go, I have my little list. Y'all probably see me looking off to the side because I have to make sure I stay on track with these lives because sometimes I get so into these topics that I'll start rambling every once in a while and get off track. But what I want to focus on is not so much of the benefits of diverse leadership because we know what the benefits are. We've seen the data, we've seen the research. I want to focus on how do you increase representation and increase diversity at the leadership level. The reason why I feel like this is incredibly important is because we're still in a place where if you look at a lot of organizations, particularly at the board level, the C-suite level, that's where it becomes really obvious where the diversity is lacking within an organization. Just being 100% honest, I'm not calling anybody out, no particular organizations in particular, but we know that oftentimes it is a reality. I was reading, I think it was Forbes, or it was either Forbes or Fortune magazine, but just looking at the numbers of how many women are in leadership positions at Fortune 500 companies, how many people of color are in leadership positions compared to our population. I mean, there is a glaring disparity there, right? And so it's very obvious. And so we know it's important. So the first thing that I like to encourage organizations to do when they do make the decision of, okay, we want to have more diverse leaders within our organization is to make an organizational commitment first. So start there and really ask yourselves, what are the benefits of it? Why do we need this? Why is it important? Because oftentimes what's going to happen as you go along this journey of, the recruitment and hiring process, you may get discouraged when you're not getting a lot of candidates to apply. But it's important to always revisit your why. It's kind of like having a mission statement. Every organization should have some mission or goals that are aligned with what they are setting out to achieve, right? And so if you revisit that why of, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we trying to increase representation and diversity at the leadership level? You're more likely to stick with your plan, right? You're more likely to go to the actual implementation phase of it as opposed to just staying stuck at, okay, we know the benefits and not really moving beyond that. So that's really important. The second thing I like to encourage organizations to do is to build out strategic priorities around it. It is not enough to say, oh, we want this without having a clear plan. Anybody who does strategic planning and who's ever been a part of a strategic plan knows that you start with those overarching strategies. Then from there, you build in tactics and specific goals. because you want everything you do to be measurable from an accountability standpoint, because it does hold you accountable. And so it is important to have those metrics in place. And I want to put a disclaimer right here. I'm not saying that it should be checking a box in terms of diversity. Oh, we have a Black person. Oh, we have an LGBTQ, oh, we have someone who is Indigenous. Oh, we have that, that is not what I'm encouraging. But I am encouraging that it's important to have metrics in place for the sake of accountability. So that's why it's so important to have strategic priorities, because just like your commitment, your mission, and your vision, your strategic priorities will keep you on track as well. So if you know this is something that you want to do in your organization, is to increase diversity at the leadership level, then you need to build out some strategic priorities on what that is going to look like. Another thing that I think is really important that sometimes gets overlooked, and I'd be remiss if hey, JP, I see you in the chat. Sorry, I'm just now saying hi. Sometimes I get so caught up in my discussion or me talking that I forget to look in the chat every once in a while. But good to see you, JP. But another thing that is really important when we talk about diversity, because oftentimes we think about it in terms of just the C-suite level. And it's also important to think about representation and diversity at the board level as well. The C-suite is important, yes, because the C-suite folks are making decisions as it relates to day-to-day operations. However, when you have folks at the board level who are overseeing governance, that's a big deal too. So you want to make sure that you have representation at all levels within the organization, and that includes the board as well. So if that is a priority for your organization, I would say build out strategic priorities around that as well, around board representation, diversity, what you want that makeup to look like, and whether or not it's representative of the populations you serve. So as you build out those strategic priorities, think high level, like the highest you can get, right? All the way up to the board, and don't stop just at the C-suite. Another thing when it comes to the recruitment and hiring process, where I see a lot of organizations get tripped up just a little bit, is that they'll recruit and say, okay, all right, we're going to recruit diverse leaders. We're going to recruit folks at the leadership level of different backgrounds and everything. And then, during the hiring process or during the recruitment process, you can see that there is a lack of cultural competence sometimes. And so certain things are said or certain things are done to indicate to the candidates that this might not be a good fit for me. I don't know if I would do well in this organization. And so to avoid that, it's really important to make sure that folks in your organization have an understanding of cultural competence. And it's also important to make sure that it's not just at the recruitment level, right? Whoever's on the search committee or the whoever's doing the hiring, but also make sure that leaders within the organization and just all members of your organization do have an understanding of cultural competence, right? Because when you do have folks who join your organization, you do want to operate in a way that is inclusive and equitable and with a sense of cultural awareness. So everybody needs to have an understanding of that. And so I think that is a staple training or workshop that I think everybody should do at some point. And it doesn't have to just come in the form of trainings and workshops. It can be providing different resources, articles, you name it. But I think people need to have an understanding of cultural competence if you are going to actually recruit and retain the diverse talent that you're seeking to have at the leadership level. Another one is leadership development. This one kind of ties into the mentorship piece that I want to talk about next week. Oftentimes you have folks right there within your organization who have a lot of potential or who have the skill set and expertise to go to that next level. So this goes back to the succession planning part of it, right? And it goes back to specific mentorship programs and sponsorship programs. Part of the reason why I think part of the reason why some organizations miss out on having really great diverse talent at the leadership level is because they're constantly looking outward. They're not recognizing the diverse talent that they have within their organization. And so if you create that pipeline through mentorship programs and sponsorship programs, then the beauty of that is that you have people within your organization who are moving up. They're more likely to stay because they know there's actually opportunities within the organization to excel and move up, right? And it's just good from a cultural standpoint. It says a lot about your culture when folks can look on LinkedIn and they can look up people who work at your organization and say, oh, that person has been there for 20 years. Oh, they've been there for 15 years. They've been there for 30 years, right? When there's not a lot of constant turnover, it says a lot about your organizational culture. Is that people not only want to work there, but they stay. They like it that much. They enjoy being a part of that community. So that's why it's really important to, as you think about creating that leadership pipeline, to think about the folks that you have internally. And then lastly, going back to that last point in terms of accountability, you have to measure. And I know some DEI practitioners actually cringe when we start getting into the weeds of assessments and measurements, but a lot of DEI practitioners recognize its importance. But as I stated before, it's really important to look at measurements not as checking a box, but as a way to hold yourself accountable. Are you meeting the strategic priorities that you've set out to meet? Are you meeting the goals? Are you meeting the tactics? Are you meeting everything that you, as far as KPIs, key performance indicators, all of those different things, you have to be able to benchmark it at each step, right? And so that's just one of the things. I mean, several things. Look, I said one of the things. It's like a whole list I got over here, but that's just some of the things that I really wanted to touch on when we talk about diverse leadership. Because as we mentioned before, we all know the benefits of it. I mean, there's no denying it. The research is clear. The data is clear. Now, how do we move from understanding to practice? How do we move from understanding to implementation? How do we move from understanding to actually going out and being intentional when you do recruit diverse talent, and internally too, when you think about the succession and pipelines? How are you being intentional in ensuring that all folks who are qualified have access to those positions? And so that's just what I wanted to talk about today. This video is actually kind of short, but this is an area that I think gets a lot of focus, but sometimes we still just miss the mark in a lot of ways because we expect immediate results. And this is one other thing I want to say about this too, when we talk about leadership and diversity at the leadership level. If you have reached a point as an organization where you have opened certain positions and you're still not getting the diverse pool of candidates that you want to apply for those positions, then it is perfectly okay to seek out external help. You have firms that exist for that very reason, to help you hire and recruit. And these firms, usually they have a pool of candidates, I mean, hundreds, sometimes even thousands of folks that they can go to on their list and say, okay, we know exactly the type of candidates you're looking for. Let's help you with the process. So it is okay to reach out to a search firm in order to get where you want to be as an organization. So I want to encourage everybody to stay encouraged and to continue, yes, dive into the research, look at the numbers, look at the data, but also continue to think about the action part of it, the implementation side of this, and how you're actually going to get from understanding to, okay, this is a goal of ours. Let's actually seek out to meet this goal through strategic implementation and strategic priorities. So yeah, that's my spiel for today. Hopefully I'm making sense. I'm on like 3 hours of sleep, y'all. Yeah, thank you. And I see folks in the chat. Hi, Dr. Rinaldi. Thank you so much for joining. JP, the homie. Thank you, Jay. I see you. Thank you so much. I see Carolyn, and I appreciate you all. Also, I do have a question. Okay, so JP asked a question. In your professional experience, why do you believe this conversation is still somewhat looked at as a delicate topic in today's society? You know what? That is a great question. And, especially right now, JP, I think anything where we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion right now, especially in 2023, everyone is, well, not everyone, but like quite a few folks have um, entered these conversations with a certain caution, right? Because it has become politicized. There are people who are questioning the value of DEI and whether or not we should be talking about diversity within our organizations. And it's always kind of been that way. I mean, look, if you look back at the civil rights movement and, you look through history, you see that there are certain topics that some folks feel comfortable talking about where others don't feel comfortable talking about it. But the only way to really reach our goals as an organization and the only way to reach our goals as a society, a community, whatever we're trying to achieve, if we are trying to become more diverse, is we have to have conversations about it. And so for some people, they do find it uncomfortable to talk about different identities and things that make us different. But it's important that we continue to have these discussions, especially at the leadership level, and especially given the types of folks that you serve. If you are an organization that works with a diverse customer base, if you're in education, a diverse student base, diverse client base, then you have to have these conversations. You have to think about not just the needs of your clients, but you have to think about the needs of your organization. Are you doing yourself a disservice by not having diversity and representation at all levels within your organization? And I would say in the 21st century, yes. if you are not aware of the needs of the folks you serve and you don't have folks on your leadership team who have a keen awareness of it, then you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. So yeah, that's my thought on it. I could go on and on though. You all know I'm pretty passionate, but yeah, I appreciate you all. And like I said, I am going to do another live next week, and I'm going to talk about mentorship and sponsorship in particular, because a lot of times you do have folks within the organization who are they are ready for those positions. They just need some guidance. And so it's important to look internally as well. So that is my Wednesday wisdom for today. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. I know tonight I have a workshop I'm facilitating, and then 3 days straight, y'all. I in hindsight, I'm like, why did I do that to myself? But anyway, so 3 days straight, I will be facilitating back-to-back presentations. I'm excited. Tomorrow, I'll be facilitating a presentation with the Better Business Bureau here, specifically diversity as an untapped superpower, right? Because we know that diversity alone is not a superpower. It's when you capitalize on it and use it to its full ability is when it becomes a superpower. And then on Friday, I will be speaking at the Association of Fundraising Professionals summit that they have here in Memphis. So they have a summit, and I'll be talking specifically about IDEA, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. Can I just say I love all the different acronyms that are used. My absolute favorite of all time is JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. I mean, for obvious Star Wars reasons. But all jokes aside, so I will be facilitating this session at the AFP Summit on Friday. And then if you have not registered for the Junior League of Memphis's Apex Conference, go ahead and register for that. The tickets are still available. There's still tickets available on Eventbrite. And so I'll be talking specifically about how to navigate resistance to DEI at that particular conference. And I think it's very timely. It is very timely. I was just reading some articles today. I'm like, we still gonna keep doing this push and pull about whether or not it's effective when we know there's a lot of research that shows it is. So yeah, those are all the different speaking engagements I have coming up. So I look forward to seeing you all there, and I look forward to seeing you all again live next week. See y'all later.